Testing. Yeah. All right. So I think we can begin. My colleagues tell me that I'm being perceived, listened well. Welcome first, everybody, to this webinar on applying for consultative status. We really have a lot of people here today, and I'm really grateful for your time. And we are reaching all over the world, so we are working on time zones that are difficult to connect. So I really appreciate that. My name is Diego Rumiani. I work as a program officer in the NGO branch in the Department of Economic and Social Affairs at the UN here in New York. And again, we are connected with people from different places. So we are trying to address a lot of universal questions that you may have about the processes for applying for consultative status. I want to tell you a little bit how this will be organized, so you already know what to expect of this webinar. The first 30 minutes, I'm going to be basically speaking and trying to cover different areas of the process. I'm going to give you a brief summary of what is consultative status, what are the organizations that are eligible, what are the benefits, what you can expect of the process. Then we are going to get into the process itself and explain you really what are the different steps and how you go about applying. And ultimately, I'm going to share my screen to show you really how the application process works, what exactly you have to do, what are the questions you're going to be answering, and show you a little bit the system. It's not a complicated process, but you really need to know the steps on how to go about it. And during the process while I'm speaking, I'm not going to be getting questions. However, you can always write questions. You can go on the right-hand side. You should see an area called Q&A, questions and answers. And there you can, at any point during the presentation, even while I'm talking, you can write your questions there. Some colleagues here may answer some of the questions, but some I will try to address at the end of the presentation. And of course, we have a lot of people here connected, so I cannot promise all the answers. All the questions will be answered, but we will try to do our best to at least answer the most. I'll try to select the most universal, the most that could be applicable to more people. We're also going to have some interactions. You can take the floor later. To do that, you can write a question, or you can also raise your hand. You have that option of raising the hand, and I will give you the floor to ask questions also verbally. That will happen after the presentation. So I think that's pretty much what we are going to be doing today. I expect maybe 30 minutes of this presentation, and later after that, we're going to go to the Q&A session. So let's start by explaining a little bit what is consultative status, and because the whole consultative status, and the process here, the consultative status is a relationship that the UN established with ECOSOC, between ECOSOC and NGOs. Since the beginning of the UN, there was a lot of relationship between the UN and NGOs. However, in the 90s, particularly in the year 1996, the UN decided to formalize that relationship into what is right now the consultative status for NGOs. And the consultative status is a process. It's a relationship that has multiple benefits and also multiple obligations. And I like to differentiate what you can expect from consultative status in two different areas. One is the formal relationship that you can establish with through consultative status, and there's certain rights and obligations that are defined in the resolution that governs consultative status, which is ECOSOC Resolution 1996-31. In that resolution, it is indicated that NGOs will have access to UN premises, and consultative status give you the access to New York. As soon as you get consultative status, you get a ground pass to you and a number of representatives. That has been changing recently because of the COVID pandemic. We have a long period of restrictions for NGO participation, and now we are gradually opening up again as situation improves. But the idea is that you have this ground pass that will give you access to New York, but also offices, premises in Geneva and in Vienna. So this is the immediate action after you get consultative. You can request this ground pass. Of course, the important thing is arrive at these premises to participate in events, and you can do that in multiple ways. You can attend events of the ECOSOC functional commissions. Normally, these are events that are, these are events only open for NGOs in consultative status. Not other NGOs can attend. There are multiple ways in participating in this event. Each commission is functions differently, but they all ensure NGO participation in their modalities. And that's something I really recommend you to explore, to really look at what are the commissions and what are the events that ECOSOC organize around the year that you will be interested to participate, because that could guide you, your application, and could guide what you're going to do after obtaining consultative status. So just to give you some examples, within this formal participation, you are having the access to attend to the events, but you also have the possibility of submitting statements to these events, either written statements or oral statements that you can deliver in the UN in these events, and that's something that NGOs really appreciate and use a lot. Of course, there are limitations in time. There are many NGOs. The consultative status right now is in the hands of more than 5,000 NGOs right now, so it's a very popular process. So of course, participation is always a bit limited, but it is in your rights to either submit in writing or to submit or to deliver orally these events. These are the formal ways of participating. However, there are a lot of informal that are maybe not written in a resolution or in any regulation of the UN, but NGOs really appreciate. And it's the possibility of organized events in parallel to very important functional meetings and in general meetings that the UN organize. These NGOs like because it allows them to showcase what they are doing in different parts of the world. It gives you access for networking, to access to UN officers, to delegations from governments, to agencies of the UN, and to basically anybody who is invited to these events. So this is really this is a good opportunity for NGOs to get involved at an international area, also to network with other NGOs that might be working on similar areas. A lot of projects came up from these events that maybe you don't have another opportunity if you work in other areas or you attend to other events. So it really gives you this exclusivity to really be involved in the international process and in the intergovernmental process, to interact with governments in the policy making and decision making process that happens here at the UN, and particularly on ECOSOC. So this is something that NGOs likes to do. You can also organize events and present in these events, in these conferences. What are the eligibility? Well, there is basically one restriction for applying for consultative status. Of course, you have to be an NGO, you have to be constituted, and the most important thing is you have to be 2 years in existence at the moment you apply. So that's very important. If you don't have that, we kindly ask you not to apply yet, to wait until you have these 2 years of eligibility and then at that moment apply. Otherwise, your application will not be eligible, and we will need to, we cannot consider that application. But other than that, NGOs from all over the world are welcome to apply. This is a free process. You don't have to pay any fee, or we really want this process to be open to everybody, irrespective of their funding, irrespective of where they are located. This is really a universal process, and we really want NGOs from all over the world, from different backgrounds, working on many different issues, of course, related to the work of ECOSOC, but really contributing to ECOSOC and to the Sustainable Development Goals from multiple perspectives. And we like to stress on this universality of application, because it's really important for you to know that this is a process open for all of you. Let's talk a little bit about the process right now. If you are convinced about the process, if you think that you can contribute, if what I just told you sounds interesting to you, and I again recommend you to look at other literature, other resources that you can find on our website, which I'm going to show you quickly, then you can start applying. And the important thing right now to know is that even though we receive applications throughout the year, we have a date that you need to remember, and it's June 1st, 2022, which is in less than a month. All applications that we will be receiving at that date will be automatically scheduled to be reviewed by the Committee on NGO, which is an organ that will look at your application in the year 2023. So this is very important to remember. All applications that has been received since June 1st last year until this June 1st, we are scheduling to the 2023 session of the committee. The committee normally meets twice a year. Normally it's in January and May. However, hopefully next year is going to be like this. However, this year we have a different schedule. It's May and September, and that's because of the COVID pandemic. The meeting conference rooms, and the UN was actually closed at several moments in the beginning of the year and before. So we have a different agenda, but we are hoping that by next year we will go back to the regular agenda, which is January and May. And at that moment, these applications are going to be reviewed. We recommend you to apply, of course, as soon as possible. You can apply it at any point of time. The reason I stress on the June 1st is because if you apply after June 1st, unfortunately, you're not going to be scheduled in 2023. You're going to start being scheduled in 2024. So the process will be extended. So we try to respect that scheduling. But of course, within the period that we're working, we try to process applications as soon as they come. So if you are already, I know that there are people on the other side that they are actually, some are even considering this, others are already working on an application, and maybe some people already submitted it to us. So the earliest you can apply, the better chances you have to be on that 2023 sessions. We go on a first come, first serve basis within that period of June 1st to June 1st. So we really encourage you to finalize the application as early as possible. You have until June 1st, but if you get earlier, then you have more chances to be reviewed on 2023, because we do have a large number of applications that apply every year, and particularly on this last month. We received a lot of applications. So how the process works, you submit the application. Let's say you submit it today. Then our office, the NGO branch, will start looking at that application. We're going to try to work with you to improve the application, to look at if there is any eligibility issues, if there are documentation that might be incorrect or missing, if there are if we have any questions to clarify about your application. We'll be in contact with you through the communication system we call the messaging system, the correspondence that we maintain with you. So it's very, very important. Probably the most important thing of this process is that your contact, your headquarter email address is really updated all the time and checked frequently, because we rely on this to communicate with you. If that change, please let us know by updating that information in our system, or if for any reason that email is not updated or is not being checked, change the email to something that you're following on this. We'll try to communicate with you, and also we'll let you know when the application is ready to be submitted to the committee. When it goes to the committee is composed of 19 member states that are going to be reviewing this application. You can have more information on who are these member states, how is their election, and more details about the committee in our website. But basically what they're going to look at is whether the application fulfills the technical requirements and you are really eligible to be recommended for consultative status. If that is the case, the NGO, the committee will recommend on those sessions, either January or May, if it's next year, and will issue that recommendation to you, which is already a big portion of obtaining consultative status. However, the recommendation doesn't really happen. It doesn't give you the consultative status, because this has to be confirmed by ECOSOC. And ECOSOC will meet next year in June and July to review the January and May sessions of the committee. So it is actually in June and July when you are officially granted consultative status, and that's really the end of the application process. And which means that if you apply right now, the earliest, assuming everything goes smooth and everything your application is in good condition, the earliest you can get consultative status is on June or July 2023. So that's for you to have an idea of the timeline. It's a long process. It's not short. It takes a while. You can also have questions issued by the Committee on NGOs during those sessions, which could eventually defer your consideration. So if you have questions during the committee, you're encouraged to respond to those questions in writing as soon as possible. You will also be invited to their committee if you can attend, or you can follow this online. Both are the same for really the chances you have in applying for consultative status. And based on these elements and based on the questions they may have, they may eventually defer your application to another session. That sometimes happens to some applicants. So unfortunately, that will delay the granting of consultative status. So very important, and we will go now into that, is to spend time on preparing a good applications to really reduce the possibility of questions from committee members and from us as well during the review process, because any questions or any misunderstanding always will take more time and will delay the granting of consultative status. So that's something to take into consideration. What I'm going to do now is move into our websites and to really show you a little bit how an application looks like, so you have an overview of what to do. And mostly I will not go so much in detail. We unfortunately don't have so much time, but I'll try to look at the different tools we have to help you in preparing the application, so you know the support that you will have in the process. So I'm going to share the screen right now. And see. Okay, and I'm going to ask my colleagues here to tell me if they can see the screen, which means that hopefully you can see it too. All right. So let me go first here. This is our website, csonet.org. This is the website of the NGO branch, where you have a lot of resources. I just want to encourage you to look at our booklet, which is a document written. We have it in different languages, as you can see, and it's a good resource in a very easy to follow language, very simple, which in a way explains probably more in detail than what I'm doing right now, but in a very basic way, what is the process about, what is the benefits of consultative status, and you can also even get more information on the functional commissions of ECOSOC, which I didn't have time to really go deep into that today. The other thing I recommend you to visit, of course, you can go around here and look at different interesting resources like the basic facts about ECOSOC status, things we already discussed a little bit. And finally, the how to apply for consultative status. This is a good section where you have really a nice video to show you step by step. We're going to do a little bit of this now in a moment. And I want you to look at this this document here, which is the questionnaire, which gives you a detail of all the questions that you will have to fill out before even starting to fill out. And also in these blue areas, we prepare these hints, which we found and just told us that is really useful because it allows you to really know what is this question trying to capture. So if you look at this, you will know exactly what you need to fill out there. Some questions may not be super clear, so the idea of this is to make it clear for all of you to know what is exactly intended. Okay, I'm not going to go exactly in detail on this, but you know this exists, and we really strongly encourage you to go through this while preparing your application. Again, if you are already convinced about this and you want to initiate a process, you can do it following the steps here. And I'm going to move to the system that will be used to record your applications. Please remember that your application can be filled out in English or French. These are the two languages we accept. These are the working languages of the UN. So these are the two languages also our system operates in. We really ask you to restrict yourself to those two languages. I'm going to now log into an application that I already created, so that's going to be easy, and I'm going to show you just the basic elements of it. You can see, oops. Yeah, I was logged in before, so that I had a problem with the new username. All right, so let's see. Start again. Yeah, this is what I want to get. Okay, so as soon as you get, and again, you will be filling out a profile of your organization. And the profile contains a lot of information that you need to fill out. But I want to really stress that if you are intended to apply for consultative status, the important thing that you need to provide us, which is what is going to go to the committee, is the name of the organization, the address, and the email address. And this is the most important thing, more than the address, because the email address is where we're going to be communicating. And this is the email address I was telling you to really be making sure that is always checked and is active. So this is an important thing to remember. There are other information that you are asked to fill out when you create a profile, but this is really what I want to stress, that information is correct and updated. After that, you are going to be filling out an application, and I'm going into this to show you how this looks like. So an application is composed of 22 questions that you have to fill out. They are grouped in 3 sections. The first section is, and here you'll see text that doesn't make much sense because I did this just to show you how it looks like. I didn't really provide something that is readable, but you can see the questions. And the questions on the first section is more about what the NGO is. Basically, what are their objectives? What are their projects, the recent projects that you did? What are the contributions? This is a very important question. Remember that the consultative status is an association with the UN that is bidirectional, meaning that you are not only expected to arrive here and get benefit and go to events, but you're also expected to contribute. The committee is going to look at NGOs that are able to bring something to the table, that are really know what they are going to be doing when they get here. So I always encourage NGOs and recommend them to do your homework and learn what you're planning to do here the moment you get consultative status, which events you're interested, which areas you think will be good for your contributions. What are the actions you're planning to take after getting consultative status? Knowing that clearly and understanding a little bit how the UN works, and particularly the work of ECOSOC, will give you an idea, will be helpful for filling out the application, and that the committee member really can understand who are they given status and what are the benefits also ECOSOC is going to get out of this association. So I want to emphasize this aspect of the questionnaire. Of course, they're going to ask you about UN conferences you attended. And again, there is no prerequisite. You don't really need to be already in the UN because actually you're applying for consultative status to be involved. So for many of you, you have never been involved with any UN activity, and that's totally fine. The idea that you're associating is to start getting involved. So, but we are asking, in case you did, whether that is the case. The second section of this questionnaire is, we call it registration structure, is more about operations. It's basically how the organization is organizing itself to achieve these objectives. And here we talk about where are you located, which countries you're working on, and how you're working on these countries, either through partners, either you have offices in those countries, or you have representatives. This is what the main thing is they want to obtain out of this. If you're working with other organizations, to describe these organizations. If you're working with the government, to tell us about your relationship with the governments. Non-governmental organizations, by its title, of course, they are not part of the government, and we want to see that independence you have from the government. But that doesn't preclude you from collaborating with the government, from receiving funds from government sources, which is fine, as long as your independence is maintained. Also, how is your structure internally? How do you make decisions? How, if your organization works based on members, who are those members? Not necessarily named because we value the privacy of the membership, but how many they are and where they are located. And again, all the relationship you have with other organizations. That's also something the committee likes to know. And if you applied in the past for consultative status, we also want to know about your history in this process. And for most of you, it's probably going to be the new time, the first time. But there are always NGOs that apply again because the process didn't conclude it successfully, or for whatever reasons you need to submit a new application. So this is the main the place where you put that. The last section of the questionnaire is income and expenditure, and here you really need to be very focused on providing for the latest year of your organization, or your fiscal year, depending how your fiscal year is organized. What are the income and expenditure that you incurred into? And we really want to emphasize the importance of this section. A lot of questions from the Committee on NGOs are on finance. So we really need to show very clearly the source of this funding, as detailed as possible, and also how that funds are invested. And particularly, you want to emphasize on the project line. We want to see that the funds are really divested into projects, and sometimes, of course, they're going to be administration expenditures, but we want to see how those funds are going into what you do, and to be detailed about it. So you may want to put several project lines depending on the different projects you have, and try to calculate how much of the funding goes into this project. This is a form that is basically numbers and concepts, so it's very structured and sometimes presents a lot of limitations for NGOs. So anything that you think needs additional clarification or explanation, so we don't misunderstand you, we encourage you have a long comment section to really clarify anything you need to clarify. And we really encourage you to fill that out if you think that we may reach wrong conclusion by just looking at numbers here. Okay, so this is also very important for a proper reading of the income and expenditure section. The last part is the summary, which basically is a bit of a repetition of before. A lot of fields are already filled out from what you filled before. The only new thing you're going to be filling out here is the number of individual or organization members, which is something already asked, but you need to really fill out those numbers. And the most important thing is to remember to submit the form. When you fill this out, you will see that throughout the process, you have here a check of everything that you've been filling out. So when your application is ready to be submitted, it will show something that looks like this: complete but not submitted. So it's not received by us if you don't submit. And we normally have difficulties there on really applications that were completed but they were not submitted. So I want to clearly show that in the process of submitting, you have to press the submit button, and that's when the application is received by us, and then we start the process. So this is really the ending. When you can start filling out the form, you can stop, return another day, fill out something else. You can work on the application form as much as you want and for as long as you want. But the moment it's submitted, which is when you press the submit button, then the application cannot be touched anymore, and it's for us to start the review process. The last thing I want to mention here is the documentation, which is also a requirement. There are 3 documents that are required: a proof of existence, a constitution, and a financial statement. A proof of existence are documents issued by governmental authorities that shows that the organization has been in existence for more than 2 years at the time of applying. The constitution is sometimes it's called bylaws or statutes, and these are documents that are showing how the organization is structured internally, the governance of the organization, and then how that structure interact to make decisions. And we really care about the decision-making process of the organization. That need to be as detailed as possible. Normally in constitutions that's the case, but you want to make sure that it is. The financial statements are like to see your official financial statements that normally at least should have a balance sheet and an income statement. These are the 2 presentations we really need. Of course, some financial statements are more complex. They don't need to be audited. Again, we don't want NGOs to incur in additional expenses. And these documents, if they are not in English or French, they need to be translated in English or French. As I said before, these are the working languages of the UN. We need to understand what you are submitting. Of course, the proof of existence, we need the original document as well, if it's not in English or French, because we need to see their validity as an official document. But all these documents need to be in English or French ultimately. These are the information on the documents. Again, any of these items I'm describing, and I'm going fast, but on purpose, because we don't have enough time, All these, there are details for every single item that I'm covering in the hints that I show you, which are available in that document. But also, as you fill out the application, let me show you that. For every question and every item you need to provide, the hints are here again. So you can really see next to the question some of the things I said, and probably much more because I didn't have time, things to take into consideration about that question. So you really have different areas supporting you on the process. Ultimately, if you have any specific question that you think are not fulfilled in my presentation today, or in the hints, or in all the documentation we are providing, you can always contact us by using the correspondence and sending us a message. Just make sure you select the category application for consultative status. And here you can write anything you want about the process, specific questions, even questions that you haven't even started applying, but you already have in your mind, even for deciding to apply. So you can ask to us at any point in time. And we tried, especially during this month, to be very active in responding. You have to, of course, wait sometimes because we have a lot of questions, but we try to be very responsive in answering any questions about the process, and even after applying, to follow up on the application if you wish. We try to keep you updated on the different status of the application that you are, but you can also ask questions about the committee and about when your application is being reviewed, and et cetera, et cetera. So, so we really want you to accompany during this project as much as we can until you get to the committee, and then the committee starts another process of communication with you, but that's between the committee and the applicant. So I think I covered as much as I could in this short time. Unfortunately, we don't have much time, but I would like to now start opening the floor. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Okay, I'm asking my colleagues to see if I'm back on the screen. Great. So I'd like to start looking at some of the questions, which probably will help me address something that is relevant for you, at least right now. So let me see this. Okay, we have several questions here. So let me see. Hold on. Okay, I have a question here. How long does it take on the average to evaluate and decide about the consultative status of applications? Do you require periodic reevaluation after the status is established? How many? Sorry, I got lost here. Yeah, here is the question. If they require several reevaluations after the process established, and how many NGOs currently hold status? Well, I told you there are 5,000, more than 5,000 NGOs currently in status. And the process, as I told you, it depends. I mean, the earliest you can get it if you apply right now is June, July 2023. So we're talking about a year, a little bit more than a year actually. But it could take longer depending on the deferrals. So if your application gets questioned by the committee, because the committee is reviewing so many, they may need to get back to your answer to that question, not necessarily on that session, but in the following session, which will extend, of course, the consideration of your application. An important thing I want to mention is after you get consultative status, we are not going to discuss this in particular here, but they are not re-evaluations. You don't need to apply again, but you need to present quadrennial reports. These are reports that you're required. This is an obligation of any NGO after getting consultative status. Every 4 years, they need to report on their activities. There is a lot of information on that on our website. And of course, if you don't provide this information, you could eventually get suspended in your consultative status and eventually withdrawn. this is not we don't want that, and the report you have to fill out is not very complicated. It's basically telling us what you've been doing in the last 4 years. But we do have sometimes, we do have NGOs that lose their status for not presenting their current report. So it is an important element after you get consultative status to remember to provide that information to our office. Then another question. Okay, they're asking here, there is one question about membership. And what is actually members? And this is a good question because NGOs have different ways of organizing internally. And not all organizations work with something called members. So if your organization doesn't work based on members, basically beneficiaries that subscribe to the organization or work with the organization and eventually have some involvement in the decision making of the organization, then you can say you're not a membership-based organization. And that's totally fine as an answer if that is your case. If you do work with members, then you need to specify, as this question asks, how many they are and where, in which countries are they located. But if you work on something different than these two possibilities I'm describing, and there are some NGOs that they do, then you just have to explain that in that question and says, well, we don't have members, we have this type of arrangement. So the important thing on all questions is to provide as many explanations as possible. If you don't provide explanations and you keep it simple and maybe ambiguous, then you may get questions from committee members, and that's something you don't want because that will eventually delay your case. So the advice I always give is to try to provide as many explanations as possible, especially in areas that you think someone may really not understand the arrangement you have. So this is a good example of that because NGOs are organized in multiple different ways internally. I'm going to look another question, and then I will maybe get someone from the floor to speak to us. So someone is asking about universities, which is an important, a more recurrent topic in applicants. We have several universities submitting applications. And they're also talking about the United Nations Academic Impact, which is another program the UN has for universities. First of all, I have to tell you, universities are applying for consultative status, and they're evaluated by the committee, and some of them got consultative status. So it's something, of course, that you can consider. The important thing about universities is that sometimes some institutes or centers want to apply, and we need those centers or their institute to be properly recognized by governmental authorities. And that's normally when it's complicated because these universities, these centers, maybe they don't have their legal personality in the country. So that is a requirement. You need to be properly recognized by the government as an entity. But the university, normally the entire university, are applying because they have that personality. So that's something to take into consideration if you are willing to submit an applications that we do have universities applying. We even have centers that were able to provide these legal personalities because the university allowed them, those institutes, those centers, think tanks, whatever, to get this in the separate legal persona. So it is a possibility. Okay, let me see if we have someone here raising the hand. So if you want to speak, you can also raise the hand. I'm going to also look at some of the questions also you mentioned. So you can raise the hand right now. And I'm looking at, okay, let me see here. I'm going to open the full list. There are many of you. Hold on, looking at. Okay, I have, I'm asking my colleagues so they can give you the floor. Ignace Harouche. Ignace Harouche. I think you have the floor, Ignace. Oh, hold on. I have a problem listening to you. Can you try again? Ignace? Yeah, the mic is open. No? Okay, we'll move to someone else then. Let's see. Okay, now I see Manam, sorry if I pronounce it wrongly, Chandrasekhar. Manam, M-A-N-N-A. It is, I think the mic is open now, but we don't hear anything. It's unfortunate. Let's see if we have a technical problem on our side. Oh, now I can hear something. But it's probably someone else. Okay, I'll try someone else then. Is that Manam? Okay. At least I'm hearing something. Let me try one more time, otherwise I go back to the questions. Hold on. Okay, I have here Victor Yidi. We are trying to give you the floor. Victor. Oh, now you should have the floor.
Hello.
Yeah, now I can.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity.
Sure.
My name is Victor Eiji from Cameroon. The name of our organization is Family Green Corporation, and we are engaged in environmental protection. I have several questions that I asked. I wrote in the Q&A, but were not answered, so I will try to give them back. The first one was about the email address. Actually, we are a young NGO and we just are creating our website. So for now, we are using a Gmail email address. And lately, we might change it to our website email address. Would that cause any problem if in the course of our work, we change our email address on ECOSOC platform? That's the first question. And the second question is about the actual work of ECOSOC with the consultant. It sure is a great asset for an NGO in Africa to be working with the United Nations. But what I want to know is how do we work with ECOSOC? You talk about what ECOSOC can allow us to do, the facilities that ECOSOC provides to us, and you also talk about what we can bring to the table. So we want to know what is it that we have to bring to the table. And I think that will be all for us. And we will soon, we did not start yet our application, but we'll make sure to end it before the 1st of January because we see the great opportunity it can be from us to be part of ECOSOC. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Egidi, and those are very good questions. So the first question is simpler. So whatever email address you have, even if you don't have the website yet, and you don't maybe have the domain of your NGO, it's fine. And you can put that email address already. And by the time, whenever you have a new email address throughout the process, if that happens, you can go to the profile I showed you before and update it. And from that moment on, we are going to start communicating to that other email address. So that's not really an issue. The second question, it's very good and it's complex. I'll try to give you some ideas of this. So what the possibility of NGOs to contribute to with ECOSOC are multiple, and there are more and more platforms that allows you to do it remotely. Events are now more virtual because of the pandemic. The UN started opening the possibility of attending events and expressing and showcasing the work you've been doing from the field. Of course, you're always welcome to attend and to be involved in the process in New York or in Vienna or in Geneva. But you also have different offices in the UN for NGOs in consultative status would allow you to have that participation where you are, which of course it has an effect on the costs of transport of traveling and to give you the way of being more involved in these processes. These processes, you have to understand that they are intergovernmental processes. So the main actors are the governments who decide on multiple issues. So the way you can contribute is by attending those events and by showing the work that your organization is doing, by proposing ideas, by providing your vision through written materials, maybe also organizing events where these individuals could attend. So depending on what the organization is doing, and some organizations work more in advocacy, some others work in grassroots projects in the field. So of course it will be different the way in which you can do that contribution. But there are more and more ways in which you can do. What I recommend you to do is, and everybody here, is to look at the different functional commissions and the different events that ECOSOC organized throughout the year. You can go to the ECOSOC website and start from there and looking at what each commission has been doing with civil society. And you will see that there are multiple ways in which you can participate. And of course, some commissions will be closer to your area of expertise and the topics you're working than others, but you can always see that there are different ways of participating. I just give you some examples from what normally most NGOs do, but might not be the case. Maybe that your organization, you should be able to contribute in a different way. I'm going to give the floor to someone else now. I hope that answered the question. Let me see now. Okay, I have Elena Reis. Elena, E-L-E. Elena Reis. And you have the floor, I think.
I did not have a question, but thank you on calling on me.
Okay, no problem. I saw your hand, that's why. No problem. We'll look out for someone else. Let me see. Okay, I have a Timothy Maha. Timothy, T-I-M. Now you have the floor. Timothy? I hear something.
Hello, sir. Good evening, sir.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. Yeah, my name is Timothy Maha, calling from Nigeria. and representing Global Reach Environmental and Education Network. Our focus is environment and education here in Nigeria. So I just posted a question in the comments, question and answer session. And I wanted to know if the certificate of income for government agency counts as part of how long, counts for how long the NGO has existed. Because we are actually a new NGO, and we started our application process for with the Corporate Affairs Commission over a year ago, and the COVID didn't make it easy for us to get our NGO incorporated. We just only got it incorporated 21. So in the light of that, I want to know if the 1 year plus before the incorporation counts as we've been in existence, since your requirement is 2 years. So that is one of the first question I have. And the second question is, you talked about what you have done in the past. What are we going to use to support that evidence? Are there things like video or write-ups or plans, or just the financial statement?
I'm sorry.
That's all I have. I don't know whether you heard it.
Yeah, sorry. The second question, I don't know if I got it correctly. Can you repeat that? Timothy?
Okay, so my second question is, you talked about giving to society, doing something, bringing something on the table. What have you done as an NGO in the past? So how are you going to verify that? What evidence do we need to provide? Is it video evidence, or our action plan, or just the financial statement?
Okay, that's good. I think I got it. Thank you. So I'll first answer the. Yeah, thank you, Timothy. I got your second question now. Thank you. So the first question, unfortunately, we need the proof of existence issued by governmental authority. So in your case, if your organization was the only proof of existence you can provide is a document stating that your organization exists since 2021, we will not be able to process it right now. You'll need to apply when it turns 2 years. However, we have situations in which governments were able to attest that the organization has been in existence before, even though the incorporation occurred later. And of course, that's very common now with the COVID pandemic, which of course, all these processes got delayed. So if the government is able to issue any type of documentation that the organization has been in existence before, even though it's not incorporated, we can. That is a documentation that you can use to prove your existence. But of course, that depends on whether the government can provide that. Unfortunately, we cannot accept other evidence but the one provided by the government. As for examples, let me see if I understood the question correctly. When you apply for consultative status, of course, you have to show that you've been working already for 2 years and that you've been contributing in the area of ECOSOC already by doing projects and by carrying out different works, either advocacy work or any type of work in the field, and that's something that, of course, whatever you did is going to be good to include in your applications. Afterwards, after you obtain consultative status, when we talk about bringing something to the table, first you show that you already been doing some work in the field. Also, that in the past that and this is what I put emphasis on question 5A, that you already know what you're going to do as soon as you get consultative status. What are the area you want to contribute? And this is actually learning. I encourage you to learn what are the different ways of participation. For instance, NGOs has been attending events, speaking at events, organizing side events here physically or in person or virtual from their countries. They've been sharing projects and involving other NGOs in the UN and even member states or UN officers in their projects. They've been showcasing through different publications that the UN issue the work that they've been doing on a particular area. So these are all the different things that after you have access through consultative status, you can start sharing and providing that input, because all this information is good for member states to have the information of what civil society is doing in countries or over the world, and to really complement what the member states are doing in these intergovernmental processes, which are deliberating on multiple issues on different areas, but we want to have the civil society involved in that process. And the way to get involved is by expressing your voice, delivering statements, being here, speaking, sharing their stories, sharing their experiences, interacting. You know, a lot of projects between governments and NGOs, or among NGOs, or with the UN and NGOs, could start in fact, it did started through the consultative status agreement, because this allows us to get the full voice of society in the UN, not only the government side. So by showing that you're bringing something to the table means that you have already worked in that direction. Even without this consultative status, you're already contributing to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, and that you can do much more when you get status, because now you're going to have that access that will allow you to have more interaction that maybe before was harder to get. So I think that gives you an idea of, and this has to do with the previous question, of the benefits and what you can get out of this process, and also how to show in the application process that you also have something to bring to the table. And I always say, you know, NGO consultative status, many NGOs may not be ready for it, or may not be willing to get involved at this point. And that's something you'll have to assess as well, because, you know, this is a long process. It requires a lot of attention and dedication. It's not a very easy application process. So you really need to assess whether this is the good moment for you to start into this interaction at the global level, because it's a global accreditation. So that's something for you to consider. And I always say it's better to have an informed decision, go through the ECOSOC website, go through what we do, look at what other NGOs did in UN websites, and see if this is really for you. Okay, I'm gonna read a few more questions, and then we're gonna start wrapping up. Let's see. Oops, I have a problem with the questions here. Okay. Let me see if I can do that. Sorry, there are so many questions, so it takes me a while to. So I see some questions about the status of current applications. I'm not addressing this because this is very specific. That is useful for everybody, but all these people that are writing about where the application is right now, or when I can expect results, or I recommend you to use the contact us feature. This is the best way to obtain information about your specific application. You can write to us and we will tell you exactly where the application is and what you can expect. Let me see. Okay, here's a good question about the financial statements. It says how we send our 2020 balance sheet as a financial statement. We don't have a more recent version of that document. And that's fine. We accept financial statements as old as 2 years at the moment of application. So meaning that, for instance, in these questions, you are planning to suggest to send a 2020 balance sheet. As long as that ends on 31st December of 2020, and you apply, let's say, these days all the way until maybe end of the year, so we have the 2 years of difference, is going to be fine. Of course, having said that, I encourage you to submit the most recent one, because what happened is by the time the application gets to the committee, that financial statement could be old already. So we encourage you to actually send the most recent one you have, but sometimes it could take time to prepare. So it's fine if you send a little bit older, but not that old, no more than 2 years. You can also, during the process, at some point, update your financial statement if you want. And eventually the committee, if they are not satisfied with that financial statement because they want something more recent, they will ask you. So eventually the process will not be stopped. It will just require an update. But again, my advice is to send you as recent as you have it, even if it's not fully prepared or audited or whatever process you use on a financial statement. It's better to have the basic information, but recent one, that may be a complete financial statement that is too old. So that's something to consider. Let me see other questions. They ask, don't we need to first create a user account in order to have username and password to log into the website to access the application section? Yes, the process, which as explained there, as I mentioned, is there are 2 steps. One is you create a profile, which basically is just the information, very basic information of your application that is accepted by us, done very quickly, normally 24 hours during business days. And then after that, you can start the application process, which is a second step where you fill out all the questionnaire that I show you and upload the documents. Then let me see other questions here. Okay, so here's a good question, I think, could be valid for some NGOs. In addition to our headquarters, we have an office in the US, but under another name. Should it be included in the answer as well? Should I submit the bylaws or just the one from my main office? So the important thing here is that you identify under which name you want to apply. And then all the questionnaire has to be, and the documentation has to be about that organization. So your proof of existence, your constitution, your financial statement should refer to that entity, and all the questionnaire needs to be about entity. You may have affiliates, you may have subsidiaries. That's important to mention in the questionnaire, and you can answer. You can actually provide answers about this. It's actually encouraged for you to provide that information in your questionnaire. But we need to be very clear of who is the entity that is applying, and all the information needs to be about that entity. There is a place where you can actually, if you have a headquarters, like in this case, I don't know where the headquarters are, but you have an office also in the US. So in the profile, you're going to put the headquarters, wherever it is. And then when they ask you about where you're registered and where you are located, you can say, in addition to the headquarters, we have this and this and this office. We, however, will require just the bylaws and the constitution of the office, or the office of this is applying. In the case of subsidiaries, you can also provide additional information on the subsidiaries, but we really know that it's the parent company that is applying, unless, which is another possibility, a subsidiary is applying, but then it will be an application about that subsidiary. So you have to choose which is the entity that is applying, and in order to decide that, you have to think that the name that you're going to be applying to, if granted consultative status, you're going to be delivering and participating in the UN and delivering statements and organizing things under that name. So it's very important that you have all the documentation and information under that name, but also that you are willing to engage with the UN under that name. So that's really what you have to think about when applying. Let me see if I can have a couple of more people speaking, and then we will finish there. Let me see. Okay, I have Joanna Panka. J-O-A. Yes, you have the floor, Joanna.
Thank you for the floor. I am Joanna Panka of Avenue for Development in Ghana. You answered the question. I wasn't very clear about that, and I'll seek your indulgence that you repeat it for me. Someone asked what we have to offer as NGOs, especially from the developing world. And you mentioned that our activities are interwoven, or they are, is it intergovernmental? I didn't get that part well.
Intergovernmental.
So, okay. That's
yeah. So basically, the process is an intergovernmental process that happens at the UN. This is meetings where governments essentially meet with each other, but you want to contribute to that process and get involved in that process, and also express your voices about what you think about that process. So that's what I meant by intergovernmental.
All right, I am clear here. I am clear. My second question has to do with the registration process. Someone asked, in fact, I wanted to ask my questions. They've already asked most of them. He asked whether, if you register and you are an entity, but you have an overhead entity somewhere, whether you should state that entity or where you are.
When you say overhead entity, when you say overhead entity, you mean like a parent organization?
If you have a parent organization.
Right. So as I mentioned before, the organizations can apply as a subsidiary level, as long as they can prove existence through a government, through the government under that entity. And of course, it's important that you mention that you belong to a parent organization and you're applying as a subsidiary. That's important that you clarify. But if you are able to provide all the documentation, particularly the proof of existence under that subsidiary or whatever you want to call it, or child entity, then you are able to apply, no problem. We have several subsidiaries in consultative status, and sometimes even the subsidiary and the parent company applied separately. That's also sometimes happens.
Okay.
All right.
Very clear.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let me see if we can get another question here. Let's see. Okay, I have Andres Bass, A-N-D. Andres, you have the floor.
Okay, cool. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me. Actually, I am somebody who promotes ECOSOC. And the funny part is, every organization, when I travel doing non-profit organization, I encourage them to apply. They did get the status, and I always miss my mark. I do not have the status. It's like so funny to tell them I do not have the ECOSOC status because I always miss the mark. I applied in 2018 when they tell me in 2019 I was in Canton Juanes, Philippines, teaching, and I didn't have no internet. I missed the mark. And And when they asked me last year again, I was in Haiti teaching.
So you missed it again.
I missed the mark again. And this year they tell me I have to reapply. Did I go to requalification, or I have to start over, or just give me my new financial statement? Thank you. By the way, I'm from Humanitarian Focus Foundation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your question. And then, yes, if, we'll have to see your case in particular. You can contact us to see where the previous applications are. But most likely, you will need to submit a new application if your application has been already closed by us for maybe missing the mark, as you said. But each case is different, so I'll recommend you to contact us. But yes, this also stressed the point that it's important to following up on the cases, and you may get questions or input, and we have so many applications that unfortunately we need to act quickly on this input in order to move the case forward, and the same with the committee. So that's why the process unfortunately is long, but requires your attention throughout it. And I know that's not always possible, because you are not only doing application for consultative status, you're doing a lot of good work out there, but we really need to also act quickly. So we really ask for your cooperation in being involved in the process as much as possible. And I also want to thank persons like you, who has been promoting consultative status, even though through other NGOs. And we really, this webinar and whole campaign we organized during this month are really trying to get reach to, maybe some people here already have consultative status, because I saw some questions, to really spread out the voice and to help us inform other NGOs that may not even know what this is about, that this is a good channel for you to participate and to get involved. So with that, on that note, I'd like to really wrap up here. We've been already quite a while. I have a lot of questions that has not been answered, unfortunately. I'm trying to cover as much as possible, also give you the chance to also speak yourself. But any questions that are here, or any other questions you come out as you encounter during the process, we really encourage you to write through this correspondence tab, this messaging system we have. We have colleagues that are really willing and trying to respond as soon as possible. We have a lot of questions, of course, these days, so you have to wait a little bit, but hopefully we can provide quick responses so you don't miss the mark of June 1st. Remember, that's the date to be considered for 2023. The earliest you can submit it, the better. But until June 1st, you are safe to be in that list. So finally, I want to thank you all. I want to thank my colleagues here who's been supporting me really well. I hope that the reception, the audio, the video well. I know it's hard. We are working all over the world with different technology here, but I hope this was useful for you, and that we continue talking through the messaging system and through your, hopefully, participation here in ECOSOC after obtaining consultative status. So thank you very much for being there. Goodbye.